Hey, good evening, Saints fans and Hootats from all over the world. This is Kyle T. Mosley here with an all-star crew. I got the Saints News crew in the house. First up, Mr. Bob Rose. What's going on, Bob?
Not much, Mr. Mosley. All you listeners and viewers, thank you for tuning in with us. I know it's been a while, but we'll call this our off-season kickoff show. We're really excited to be back together, guys. The three of us and Brennan will be joining us in a minute. We don't get a chance to sit down and talk much like this, these days. So I'm excited.
Yeah, we're just doing a little roundtable, just kicking up some news. But John stirred up a whole lot of news this week. John, what's going on with you, man?
I didn't do anything. I just saw what was given to me and I just put it out there. So I'm good, man. I'm as bummed as anybody to see the season end the way it did. And, it leaves a lot of uncertainty going forward. But I think with that comes a lot of excitement. So it's probably, as we always say, the most important offseason ever for this team, right?
Yeah.
But I'm good. So that's all that matters. We survived the ice and all that craziness last week. So, I mean, it was nuts. So hopefully you guys made out too, Kyle. I know you had some things going on with that.
Yeah, busted pipes, 3 days without power, water. Very, very interesting. Got back to nature. In a big way. But
that's something.
I'll tell you one thing, man. If you have shelter out there, guys, be blessed for the shelter. You can find a way to be able to get around to do the other stuff. But I was praying for a lot of the people who are out on the street, didn't have any homes or had to find other accommodations, So let's talk about some Saints, guys. Before we get into that, we got Brendan. We're going to bring him into the fold here. Let's see, Brendan. There you go. How you doing?
I'm good. How are you guys?
Good. Man. All right. I'm being attacked by a mosquito hawk right now. So it's crazy.
Always something.
All right. Let's see here. We got some people talking already in the chat. We got Jerry, got Courtney, we got Johnny, Alex. All right. Courtney, we're not cussing tonight, man. So just keep it clean. And we will bring you guys in. If you want to be in and talk with us or ask some questions to the crew, we're going to allow y'all to do that around 30 minutes from now. But right now, let's kind of talk about what's happening out in the Saints land. Look, guys, it's been pretty interesting over the past couple of weeks, but let's talk about the news of the day. Russell Wilson has been expressing his desire to possibly seek a trade, but his camp officially said that is not true, according to Adam Schefter. Let's start with you, John. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think this is how things spread into a big old wildfire, right? I mean, you get the whole, hey, he's linked to the Saints and all that, and then we kind of get some clarity. It said, hey, he's not asked for the trade. Saints are one of the teams he'd like to be dealt to. That makes a lot of sense given kind of the ties with Drew Brees and just some other things that have gone on. Look, it's a YOLO move, right? It's a pie in the sky type of scenario. I don't think there's, it's unrealistic, but at the same time, there's a lot of moving pieces to that. We've already seen guys like Carson Wentz get dealt. We've seen, Matt Stafford get dealt, Jared Goff get dealt. We're talking about Deshaun Watson. Jameis Winston doesn't have a home right now. And see, in all the midst of this, we still don't have a decision from Drew Brees. So look, it's very interesting time right now. If you're any team, you go out and get somebody like Deshaun Watson and you go out and get somebody like Russell Wilson, you're going to have to ask. And at some point, the Saints enter with a few draft picks, a handful. Hopefully they'll get some compensatory picks, but there's ones that, you're still waiting on discipline from the NFL about the other COVID violations too. So, it's going to be an interesting offseason to say the least, but man, if he's available, you got to do your due diligence. The cap number, they can always work through that. They've just made $30 million just by the Brees move and Nick Easton. There's more of those moves to come. And man, the crazy part is we're less than 3 weeks now away from the new league year starting. So this is going to be pick up really quick around the league.
Yeah. Well, Brendan, you wrote the article. Talk a little bit about some nuances there. Anything that John didn't cover that we may need to know about what's happening with Russell Wilson?
Well, it's just kind of a flurry of things that happened this morning, right? You had the initial report that Wilson's camp had been gauging a couple different teams and maybe their interest in their client. And then you had the Adam Schefter stuff where it came out that, hey, no, he hasn't requested a trade or demanded a trade, but here's a short list of teams that he would be interested in playing for if Seattle was looking to move on from him. And then, of course, you had the Athletics story that came out today that kind of detailed some things that happened throughout the year between Coach Pete Carroll and Russell, and the mess that happened right for Seattle this season, including Russell Wilson storming out of a meeting prior to a Thursday night game after he had some suggestions for how to get the offense kind of rolling and moving back in the right direction. And his ideas were essentially dismissed, right? So there's a lot of things that happened today. I think the one thing that really sticks out to me is 9 times out of 10, you don't create a short list of teams that you want to be traded to unless you want to be traded. So that's the thing that stuck out to me, right? You don't sit there and go, oh, these are the teams I'm interested in playing for unless you want out or unless you have an idea that maybe you are on your way out. So I found that very interesting, especially since the 4 teams that were mentioned in Adam Schefter's report were not the exact 4 teams that were mentioned in the report earlier today. So obviously that was something that maybe Russell and his camp got out fairly quickly after the news this morning.
Interesting. You think they were feeding the media there, Bob?
Yeah, I think it's a cat and mouse game right now. Look, when we saw Tom Brady make the move that he made last year, and by the way, there was a move I went on record numerous times saying, Tom Brady would never leave New England until he retires. So by Brady making that move, I think that set a precedent for all big name quarterbacks that pretty much nobody is untouchable. If the quarterback wants out, he gets his wish. If the team wants to ship the quarterback out, they get their wish. You have a stalemate between Deshaun Watson and the Houston Texans right now, and then you have this back and forth Seahawks and the media. He said, no, they said. Will Russell get moved? I find it hard to believe, but again, Brady set the precedent last year. And John, you mentioned, Carson Wentz has already been traded. We could see Garoppolo, we could see Sam Darnold, Derek Carr is in the wind. So I think that this is going to be a major movement time for all, quarterbacks this offseason.
Yeah, what is going on? The quarterbacks seem like they are holding all of the cards there, John. We have Stafford. He requested a trade. They gave it to him very, very quickly. Then you have Deshaun Watson, who the Houston Texans cannot seem to get on the page with him at all. And looks like he did have a meeting with the new head coach, and that didn't go well. So what's going on? Why are the quarterbacks so disenchanted this year?
I think it's the pressure to win too. You look at other people. Sam Darnold's another name that's floating out there, and even Teddy Bridgewater and the Panthers. I mean, I don't understand why you make the move for Bridgewater, and then suddenly now you have all that wide receiver production out of him, and for all intents and purposes, he did everything he could, right? And there's some things on Carolina that wasn't as good, and they were a team that wasn't expected to be that great this season, and they were kind of in a rebuild. And so, I mean, again, it's just the moving parts and pieces of the NFL, and there's so much pressure to win. And look, I mean, that matters. That stuff matters. The competition matters. People don't want to be stuck in a place where they're not appreciated. And, you're going to see a lot of fallout from rosters. I mean, I mentioned it before we even got on. I predict there's going to be tons of roster turnover for every team, and it's just going to be these big names that just kind of go and move around. And so naturally it comes that everybody that gets released is going to be on the Saints radar, right? They're a fit and all this other good stuff. But look, it's going to be interesting how the salary cap plays out. I think that has a little bit to do with it, and that number's not finalized yet. But look, again, it's a what have you done for me lately type league, and teams are willing to take a risk and leap. And you've seen what some of the rookie quarterbacks were able to do this year, like Justin Herbert. So that's encouraging if you're trying to draft one. But then again, you got COVID. So you're looking at a sample size last year from college. It's like, I don't know if you can use that, and you don't have a scouting combine. You're just gonna have to work on pro days. So it's just really a wild and weird time across the league. And, one man's trash is another man's treasure. Right. And so that's how it's going to go around some of these places.
Yeah, definitely. So right now, I mean, you're going to see a lot of crisscrossing across the league, across conferences. Everybody thinks because NFL is the copycat league, right? So all of a sudden you see Tom Brady comes into the NFC South. He wins a championship. The Saints had the opportunity to beat these guys, right? It could have easily been New Orleans up there hoisting the Lombardi for a second time. Brendan, how do you see Deshaun Watson and the rest of those guys, translating out? Or do you think there's going to be a chance that he gets out of Houston, or is it just going to be he's staying pat and some other these guys like John mentioned, or will actually see new homes?
Well, first off, shout out to Hall County, Georgia, Deshaun Watson, a local guy. Him and I went to rival high schools at the same time. So shout out to Sean. I always rooting for that guy, hometown hero, right? But I think Deshaun kind of set the precedence for everybody else, right? He has the leverage. He just signed this massive contract. He's got the no trade clause, which we didn't mention with Russell Wilson. Another guy was a no trade clause. So they can really sit there and almost dictate where they get traded. I think for Deshaun, it's a lot of back and forth, but Houston is a dumpster fire. And I think the one thing that the Texans did to maybe make a statement that's going a little under the radar is granting J.J. Watt his release, while they have been very vocal about the fact that Deshaun's not getting traded. That might be a move by the management to go, hey, listen, we're going to go ahead and grant maybe the best player in franchise history, let him walk, but for you, we're going to try to get you to stay. I think at the end of the day, the bigger name guys are going to be the guys that get all the headlines. But I think Bob was the first one to say, like, Sam Darnold, Derek Carr is a guy that's really going under the radar as well. I think those guys really have big opportunities to get out. I saw that the betting odds right now in Vegas are now Marcus Mariota is the favorite to land in New England. That's a guy that we haven't really talked about. But I think there's going to be a lot of quarterback shuffling around. I think a lot of guys are going to get their wishes. I think we're going to see a lot of guys in new uniforms. So all of our Photoshop people out there, get ready to do as many swaps as possible over the next couple weeks. Every team, just have it ready. Just go ahead.
Yeah, this one,
there you go.
Right there. This one, right, I was like, man, they put him in the number 9 quick. It's like, forget Drew. All right, let's go ahead.
Man.
But, hey, that's how it's going to be for the next couple of weeks, especially at the quarterback position. And honestly, I don't remember a season, at least in recent memory, where we potentially have this many quarterbacks, at least as the starting quarterbacks, switching teams. So it's going to be real fun, real interesting.
Look, okay, we don't know what's going to happen with Drew Brees. I heard earlier this week he gave a shout out to a young man in the Philippines, and the way he was talking, like, yeah, we're the New Orleans Saints, and this didn't sound like a guy that was ready to retire there. Bob and John and Brendan, sounded like a guy that's coming back. So what's going to happen to this guy here? What's going to happen to this guy here? And if he does come back, will any of those two quarterbacks stay? Bob?
First of all, Drew Brees is not coming back. I'd be willing to bet my apartment and all 3 of my kids' college funds on it. I would.
Hold on, I'm writing this down.
Ooh,
yeah,
do it.
You heard it first.
You heard it first. Personally, I think that the official announcement from Drew is probably going to come in the first or second week of March. If he comes back, it is with the blessing of obviously, and not only his wife and family, but Sean Payton and the organization, with the understanding of, that this will be indeed probably the swan song. And if Drew decides to cut, Drew's a smart man, we know that. I believe that he felt about a quarter of the way into the season last year that his physical skills had diminished to the point that it was no longer acceptable to him. To me, it was written all over his face, and game in and game out. But if he comes back, that tells us how seriously injured he was last year, and he believes that it was the injuries and not a decline in his skills. So on the slim chance, and I'm pretty clear about what direction I feel he's going to go. But on the slim chance that he comes back, the Saints have to draft a quarterback, to sit behind Drew. They have to. They have no choice. Not anymore. Because you're not going to ask a guy like Jameis Winston to come back and play, sit behind Drew again on another 1-year contract, because this is Jameis's livelihood too, and he's in the prime physical shape of his life. Taysom Hill. Taysom is a gadget player. His most effective use of the Saints offense is what we have seen from him the last couple of years. Tight end, running back, gadget quarterback, wide receiver, slot receiver, etc. It's not as an NFL starting quarterback. And I've been asked a couple of times, could Taysom Hill be included in a trade, or could he demand one? He could be included in a trade, yeah. As far as demanding one, he doesn't have a lot of ground to stand on, especially with all the other names at the quarterback position that are asking to be moved. But if another team believes that they can make Taysom Hill into a starting quarterback, in their particular system, then I absolutely feel that the Saints would be pretty quick to pull the trigger on a move like that. But no, I do truly believe that Drew is going to retire, and I stand firm in my belief that the Saints are going to do everything that they can to move forward with Jameis Winston as the starting quarterback, at least in 2021, which means all these pieces, all these questions that everybody has been asking, including us. When is Drew going to make the announcement? Are they going to make a move with Jameis or somewhere else? All these things are going to happen very, very fast. Before the start of free agency, which is March 17th, as you mentioned before, John.
Okay, well, you talked about drafting the quarterback. This guy here, his name has been linked to the New Orleans Saints, but also he's been linked to some other clubs. Do you believe Mac Jones could be there for the New Orleans Saints, John, at that spot? Was it number 28?
28, yeah. I mean, it's very possible. Again, you look at some of the teams like Indianapolis trading for Carson Wentz. That's a team that doesn't need a quarterback now, right? And I mean, you look and see some of these other teams that are going to be looking at, you don't know what the Jets are going to do with Sam Darnold. I mean, there's going to be teams out there that are going to look for a quarterback, right? And Carolina's one interesting one. If they can't pull off a trade, do they draft somebody right high? And I don't know. Mac Jones seems to be a guy that a lot of people are falling in love with and such. And, I'm not convinced 100% that they would draft a quarterback. I mean, everybody's got to remember too, Joe Lombardi left. He went to go be the Chargers offensive coordinator. He was the quarterback's coach, and Drew's not there. So my biggest concern about drafting a quarterback is who's going to develop him, right? Because you're not going to have Drew there anymore. You're not. I mean, Sean Payton obviously is a quarterback guy, right? And you still got Pete Carmichael, and there's still a quarterback coach to be, determined and stuff. So my fear is if they draft somebody, I don't know where that development necessarily comes from, where you've had, guys like Jameis and Taysom who've sat behind Drew and they've sat under Joe Lombardi. They know kind of the ins and outs of it, but putting a fresh rookie out there to compete, that's going to be a little bit tough thing, and especially against a defense as vaunted as Tampa, right? I think that's one of the reasons they won their championship is because their defense was stellar. And if anything, give me a stellar defense of New Orleans and I'll be happy. I mean, the offense can come, but, defense wins championships, and the Bucs, they proved it.
Proved it big, man. That defense really was the difference maker for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Okay, so let's talk about Cam Jordan. Has some very interesting and pointed comments. John, you sent a clip. Let's see if we can hear this clip.
said about Drew Brees, and this is his last year. Is this his last year? And if so,
can you guys hear?
Up next?
Jameis Winston up next, I believe, is what Sean Payton said.
Jameis, okay.
Yeah, I mean, Sean wouldn't say, he's fighting for Jameis to be back if our goal was to have Taysom. But that's again, rare instances where it's just beyond my pay grade. Rare.
Wow. Okay. I want to hear this one part again. Hold on.
Say, he's fighting for Jameis to be back if our goal was to have Taysom. But that's again, rare instances where it's just beyond my pay grade. Rare.
Okay. John, break that down to us.
I mean, he's reading between the lines, and Kyle, you and I, we all know, right? Going back to the show with Jim Trotter and Steve Weiss back there where they were doing that inside the huddle, and they had Peyton on, and look, they were talking about Jameis getting a shot to come back and compete, right? And for me, I don't think it's a no-brainer. And look, no disrespect on Taysom Hill, but his sample size of him being the guy, take out that Broncos game, and those 3 games, 2 against the Atlanta Falcons and the other one against the Eagles, was mixed. He just did not pick up on his reads. He wasn't good through his progression. He wasn't comfortable in the pocket. He was just a step behind a little bit, and his ball security is a problem. So again, if they can't land Jameis, if they can't do those things right, I think he's got to grow up really fast, because there's going to be some really pain points and struggles. And when you have an offensive line that good, you've really got to be able to pull the trigger fast. And so, look, going to Cam's comments, look, I think it's going back to everything that's been said. This is something that I think Sean Payton's talked about. It's not like he's a guy that you got to read between the lines. And when you get certain things, you won't get it directly. But if you read through it and you see all the things that he puts together, Jameis Winston seems like the guy that they're going to re-sign. That's the likeliest scenario to happen. They're going to re-sign him. He's going to compete. I think, you even go back when Taysom was named the starter. You heard reports and rumblings of the locker room not being happy about that. You hear comments like this, I think there's validity to it, right? And so, look, I think people believe in Jameis, and obviously he's a former first rounder, threw a ton of yards. His turnovers was the big thing that he had to work on, right? And so it's a bummer that we didn't get to see him in training camp really, or even preseason. And hopefully this season with COVID, hopefully not being as much a factor, we can see some of that. But man, you're up for an interesting quarterback battle. And then also I'll go back to what Sean Payton had said is, he made a commitment and a promise to Taysom in the last offseason that, that Jameis was going to come in and if something happened during the game, but he made a commitment to Taysom Hill that he was going to be their guy if something happened to Drew.
He did keep his word. He did keep his word to Taysom. And I think I was talking to Jordy about that as well, Hultberg. And when you look at Jameis, and I had one of his representatives to reach out to me. They weren't too pleased with the piece that Andrew, our intern, wrote about his projected salary and everything. But what he said was the fact there's 6 other teams that have shown interest in Winston. And they have already given the Saints their proposal. Interesting. So there is something to what Sean Payton has been saying all along about reaching out and trying to get Winston in as soon as possible. But when you hear these other rumblings about guys like Wilson possibly being available and everything, I think the Steelers also had some eyes on Winston before Roethlisberger decided that he's going to probably help restructure his massive contract for the Steelers, right? But you still have a team like the Chicago Bears out there who have not been able to figure out that quarterback position at all. So and look, guys, Ryan Pace, who came from the Saints organization, is on the hot seat right now. If he and Nagy cannot put it together, if they cannot be able to solve what's going to happen with the leadership on the field, I think he's at the end of his stay in Chicago. So any last thoughts, Bob or Brendan?
I'll be the conspiracy theorist because I think that's the fun thing to do. That's be the devil's advocate. Sean has never really been a guy who's came out publicly and said the things that he said about any single player the way that he spoke about Jameis this offseason. So could it be a smokescreen for something else? Whether that is like what Bob said, whether that's drafting a quarterback.
Well, he did do that with Taysom last year. Remember around the Super
a little
Bowl?
bit.
Yeah.
A little bit.
Yeah.
So maybe it is a new Sean Payton, but, I think deep down, and this is just me speaking, I think that everyone in that Saints organization, from Drew to Sean to Jameis to Taysom, know exactly what Drew's going to do, whether it's this week, next week, early March, late March, whenever it is. I think everyone has an idea of what is going on already. And with that being said, maybe Sean is just showing his hand. But with how private this organization is, and with how very little gets leaked out and how very little is said very publicly by Sean, part of me wants to go, well, maybe this is a smokescreen for something else. But I am the biggest. I want Jameis Winston to be the next quarterback of the New Orleans Saints as anybody. And to what John said, I really was disappointed that we didn't get a chance to really see what he could do this past offseason. I hope he's back, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's a little bit of a smokescreen.
Bob, smokescreen?
It's entirely possible, and I actually think it's a combination of a smokescreen and Sean being true to what he has said all along since the end of the season. Listen, I think if we had a preseason last year or off-season camp, when Drew went down, I think Jameis Winston would have been in there. It takes a while to pick up Sean Payton's system. And Jameis with his first year into it, I just don't think that Coach Payton felt like Jameis was able to step in and absorb an entire game plan. The way Taysom knew the offense. Now we're going into an off season where Jameis's teammates all year long and coaches have praised him for his practice habits, for his maturity, for his ball security and accuracy. Two things that were rightfully knocks on him when he came to New Orleans. Now, whether all that is true, we'll believe it when we actually see it once he gets onto the field. I believe in my own conspiracy that, and I've said from the start of the offseason that I thought that Jameis Winston was going to be the next quarterback of the New Orleans Saints. And that I thought, that if that's true, the Saints need to do it before the start of free agency. So that's why I said, before, once all these things start to happen, they're going to happen very quickly. If Jameis Winston hits the open market, that tells us right then and there, that's not the Saints saying, well, go field your offers and come back to us. That's the Saints saying, we always planned on going another direction. What we could see happen in the Jameis Winston situation is the Saints sign him to a 2 or 3 year deal. Fairly lucrative, but also a fairly easy out for the team if he performs poorly. Then they turn around and draft a quarterback in the first round. That way you have two quarterbacks. We've seen other teams do it. Once Jameis hits that year 2 or year 3, even if he plays well and that salary escalates, you can then let him walk or deal him, like we're talking with Deshaun Watson, Sam Darnold, etc. Deal him, get some draft picks back while you have a former first-round pick still playing on a rookie contract.
Interesting. Nice concept.
Let me throw this out here too, because
before you throw it out, John, I was told Jameis is not looking for anything less than probably 4 years. So I'm just saying. Okay, go ahead, John.
No, I was just saying, and obviously say this, that the domino we're still waiting to fall is Drew Brees' announcement, right?
Yeah.
And I don't think you're going to hear on a Twitter post or anything like that. That's not a pomp and circumstance type deal. I think it's going to be a well thought out type of call that's set up that he's going to make his decision. Now, if he comes back, it might be like last year where he just posts on Instagram saying, hey, I'm coming back, type thing. But if this is truly it for it, I think it's going to be an announcement from Drew with this type of setting and that it deserves, not just some random thing where he puts it out. I don't feel that way, but that's got to happen, before we really figure out what direction this team's going to go in. Because some aspects, I think he's still a little bit undecided, but maybe he's leaning more towards retirement. But there's always that thing, man. You still got a lot of good things there. Maybe you can put this team on your back another season, but there's a lot of other things that have to fall. But regardless, they made him money. They made the space by lowering his money down, and obviously that's not something that you take lightly. But either way, it could work for him.
Yeah, and you see, Jameis said, I think in his interview with Michael Vick, that Drew was telling him or kind of encouraging him that this is going to be his opportunity, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All right. Who will be the cap casualties, guys? Who wants to take that first?
Where do we start? I'd say cap casualties. So they're just going to have to make some tough decisions, right? And it's not that they can't keep the guys, but we'll talk about Quan Alexander. I know he wants to stay. That's going to be one that they're going to have to look at. Janoris Jenkins is another one too. I think some of this cap stuff, if they can extend Ryan Ramczyk, that's going to help with that 5th-year option. Same thing with Marshawn Lattimore, but obviously a lot of people have been talking about him as trade bait, and I just don't think that makes sense at all, because if you lose Janoris Jenkins and then you're going to trade away Lattimore, what sense does that make? You're back almost where you started, right? And so, I think those are some of the names. Obviously, those 3 veterans with Sanders, Alexander, and Janoris Jenkins, that those are obviously ones you want to look at. They're not going to pick up Jared Cook's roster bonus that's due, that $8 million. Then I think, they'll do some shuffling around with like Michael Thomas's contract, Cam Jordan's contract. Then they also have some leeway probably with DeMario Davis's contract to move some things around. But cap casualty wise, I think they can make things work, but there's some people, like I said, with those that they're just going to have to make decisions on whether they pay or not. And I think it's those 3 guys that you're looking at right now offhand.
Okay. Anyone we're missing? Anybody that you guys think?
Yeah, there are a couple guys. I think Malcolm Brown is a guy. There would be very little dead cap if they moved on from him, and I think they'd save themselves about $6.5 million. Listen, we all, John, I know you love the players that you mentioned before. As do I. I think Sanders is on the chopping block. A guy I think will probably go, and I think we saw the groundwork kind of laid last offseason. Thomas Morstead. You can't pay a punter $4.5 million when you're in cap hell. You can't. And I know what Thomas said, and that you posted in your end of season article, Brendan. He had some issues, and we thought that he was a little bit nicked up. And it came out in your article, Brendan, a couple of days ago that he was. And Thomas Morstead still has a lot of great football left in him. But they stashed a punter on injured reserve last year. Blake Gillikin out of Penn State. That he has the same kind of characteristics as Morstead. Able to boom the team out of field position trouble. Really good placement on his kicks. So again, you can't pay a punter $4.5 million. Latavius Murray is another guy. Now, Murray, just like DeMario Davis and Michael Thomas, he has some leeway where they could restructure his existing deal perhaps a little bit and push some money back. But we know how Sean Payton feels about running backs, and that he can dredge a running back up from pretty much anywhere on earth and have him be successful in his system. So Latavius Murray is another name to watch as far as cap casualties go.
What about Will Lutz?
I don't see it. I think something was wrong with him last season. He wasn't the same after that Bears game when he got hurt, and I think he played hurt through the whole entire year. I mean, again, this is just speculation, but I think given how one time they had 11, they went through 11 kickers, and then they found Will Lutz, and he's the guy. He's the guy. I don't see that even being remotely a possibility. There's no way.
Okay.
Well, and I'm sorry to interrupt, Kyle. It's funny that you say that about the kickers, John. To piggyback on your point about Janoris Jenkins and Marshawn Lattimore, Saints fans, if you're really thinking that you're going to buy into the trade rumors about Marshawn Lattimore, do yourself a favor and click on the defensive game tape of 2015 or 2016. Marshawn Lattimore is going to be staying in place. But Marshawn Lattimore is going to be staying in place. If Janoris Jenkins is a cap casualty, then cornerback becomes a high priority for this team. I think it's more likely that they're just going to redo a deal with Janoris too.
Yeah, I think Janoris is pretty well ingrained and understands the defense, right? And having him opposite of Lattimore would make sense if they, and you could see this, they could cut him, right? And they could be able to re-sign him. That's a possibility. Do they want to take that chance by letting him go out to the market? Don't know.
I'll
John,
throw something out here.
You're smirking there. So what's going on?
I was just saying, I'm going to throw out the wild card. Just remember, Aaron Glenn left. Chris Richard came in. Chris Richard, famous for the Legion of Boom, a lot of things. Richard Sherman's a free agent. I'm not saying he should be the guy, but if he could come in for a cheap, I mean, you just looking at a guy like Chris Richard, he's very respected around the league. I'm not saying it's the second coming. Please don't misinterpret what I'm saying. Because I think Marcus Williams is the most important guy that you got to re-sign right now for that to happen. But I think it's just one of those things where you put some of the pieces together, and that could be something to maybe pay attention to.
Well, let's look at that. Chris Richard, like you say, Legion of Boom, has some ties. Let's say they can't re-sign Marcus. Earl Thomas is out there, right? You guys are kind of
the old Legion of Boom.
Yeah, well, I'm just saying, though, if you want to talk about some ties and some people that are out on the market, that's a possibility. I know people say he's a headache case, but
CJ Gardner-Johnson is too. So is Michael Thomas. I mean, I'm sorry, guys. These guys got a tons of divas on this team and tons of people that are head cases, and they find a way to make it work. And I'll just say this without getting into it, that it was Cam Jordan had said it on the Great Dane podcast with Morton Anderson, talking about the locker room, that it's one of those that just tells you how far they've come, is that, everybody has a voice and everybody has said, he's like, not every locker room and everything has that spot, but everybody can freely say, and everybody gets along. And, there is no person that just comes in and just leaves and it's all about them. So I thought that was pretty interesting what Cam said the other day.
Okay. Any last thoughts before we go on to the next topic? Brendan, anything?
I think what Bob said with Latavius Murray is interesting, and I think it's even more interesting, especially for Saints fans, because Mark Ingram is available again. And that was a guy that a lot of people were upset to see go, and I know the production of Mark is nowhere close to what it was 2 years ago, but I know that a lot of Saints fans, that is an easy speculation to make. Well, if we can save money here and bring Mark back, how about that? But I love Latavius Murray. I said it, I think throughout the
underrated
season with John. Yeah, I think I said it with you throughout the season. Underrated. He's the most underrated running back in football because of what he's able to do, and he gets shadowed and outshined by a guy who's going to be consistently, if he stays healthy, knock on wood, the best running back in football, or at least one of the top three. So when you have a guy like Camaro in front of you, sometimes it's hard to sit there and get the spotlight, but what he does for this team is just as good, if not better, than prime Mark Ingram.
Yeah, and doesn't have a big ego, right? Listen, John, I think you brought this up as far as Jared Cook, or one of you guys brought Jared Cook as a possible casualty. Huge bonus that's due to him as well if they do keep him. Don't see that happening. So what's going to happen to the tight end position?
I think you're expecting a big leap out of Adam Trautman, and I think he can do it. I really love what he's going to bring, Kyle, you and I remember speaking to his college coach and talking so much about how heavily recruited he was. I just think he's got the smarts. He's got the hands. They just need to really unleash him. And I feel like it's going to happen. Josh Hill's around. Garrett Griffin was great in a pinch when they had some issues. Josh Hill's a guy just kind of had a down year, but he's still valuable for this team. And, look, if they do get Jameis or they do something, if he is whoever the quarterback is, if it's not Taysom Hill, it's really going to be interesting how they still use him. If he's still going to be a joker guy, or they still going to try to put the ball in his hands and do things on a tight end perspective. But, look, I think that you look at some of the free agents, there's some other guys. Look, I know he was kind of highly sought out after Cincinnati, but Tyler Eifert didn't have a good year in Jacksonville. He's somebody maybe you could take a quick flyer on, a low-risk deal. I mean, those are the types of things that the Saints are going to have to look at, too, if they're truly in cap casualty, cap hell, if you want to call it that. But they're going to have to look at some of these guys with low-risk deals and, potential high ceilings, high rewards type systems. But, to answer your question, it's got to be Adam Troutman. I think he's ready to make that leap, but I still think they're obviously going to need somebody else in there to make catches and do different things that the Saints ask. I mean, tight ends are so valuable when you play for New Orleans Saints. They're just unbelievably valuable.
Bob, you talked about Mr. Graham. Do you see that as a possibility?
Bring the band back together. Let's go.
Honestly, no, I don't. I was asked about it a couple different times, and and I know, Kyle, you're referring to the article that I wrote out a couple days ago about a potential reunion of former Saints that are hitting the free agent market right now. And while there are some intriguing names out there, Jimmy Graham being one of them, and there are reports flying around social media too that he would be interested in a reunion, with Sean Payton. Now, Jimmy Graham's just interested in getting paid at this point in his career.
Yep.
If Jimmy comes back to the Saints, it's on two conditions. There are conditions that Jimmy has to meet with the team. It is that he has to play at a severely reduced salary, which I don't believe he's willing to do. And he has to accept a secondary or complementary role in the offense, which I also don't believe he's willing to do. I think that the Saints drafted Adam Troutman last year with 2021 in mind all the way. I don't think that they expected a big contribution from either him or Zach Bond on the defensive side. I think that they were looking at their potential free agents coming into this offseason, and that's why they made the move that they did. Like you pointed out, John, everything that we heard out of team headquarters, they were really encouraged with what the progress that they saw out of Troutman as a blocker and as a receiver. And as a result, we saw his snap count increase down the stretch. And he was on the field in some big situations, late December and through those playoff games. So, yeah, I fully think that this is a job. The starting job is for Troutman to lose. If they're going to kick the tires on any free agents, a name to keep in mind, and he was really productive in a complimentary role for the Rams, is Gerald Everett. He's the type of guy, and he's 27, 28 years old. So he fits in that age range, the sweet spot where the Saints like to look at their free agents after those colossal failures from aging players earlier in the decade. But yeah, I think moving into 2021, the starting tight end is Adam Troutman's job to lose.
Yeah, Everett hurt us in the NFC Championship game. I do remember Mr. Everett. All right, guys. A name I want to ask you guys about, and I know people think he's untouchable for the New Orleans Saints, but could we see some restructuring going on? Well, two guys restructuring going on: Teron Armstead and Cam Jordan. No.
I thought Brendan might have took that one, but no, I think so. Absolutely. With Thomas, there's, his massive contract decision. They can push some of that money. That's not a problem, obviously, with a guy like him. But, Teron Armstead and Cam Jordan have always been guys that are willing to restructure and do those types of things. And the thing that everybody's got to remember about restructuring is it's not that people are taking less money. You know what I mean? Is it depending on how they restructure, you're still getting paid that money, but you're doing a favor of adding extra, kicking it down the line. And that's what drives people so crazy about the Saints cap, is that they do these restructures, they do these things, and they're like, how do they get all this money? eventually the bill comes due, but they've also been banking on the salary cap raising every single year. And this is the year that it looks like it's not going to. So, they could employ those tactics of adding voidable years onto the deals to spread out the cap hit and lower the base, lower the charge that they're going to get. I think Teron Armstead would be a great one to do. I think Cam Jordan would be a great candidate for that. That's one of many ways that this team can get under the cap. The biggest concerns that I think you have is really not many. Armstead, I thought, played outstanding last season. Had it not been for the COVID games, I think he would have actually played the whole season, something he's never done in his career. And I think he looked fantastic. So once he's healthy, nobody can touch him. And him and Ryan Ramczyk are two of the best tackle duos in the league, if not top 3, top 1, top 2. You know what I mean? So those two would be somebody that I'd look at. I think they're going to do some things with Demario Davis's contract to move that around. Andres Pete would be another one that they're going to have to look at doing something with his contract. But, all in all, there are plenty of players that all those top cap hits that they can move that money around to be able to make space to get under the cap and get a little bit of space to make in this process.
What about a guy like Alvin Camaro? Could we, I know the contract you just signed, but could you try to push some of that money back as well and convince him you're maybe in a win now mode?
Yeah, I think so. I'm pulling it up right now, but like his contract, it's a 5-year deal. So thing is, you're going to look at next year. He's got a $5.5 million base. No, excuse me, $2 million base this year, $3 million signing bonus. His cap hit's only 5. I mean, there's not too much you probably can do this year. Next year it escalates to about 14.5. So I don't know about this year particularly. Maybe you can get a little bit of relief for that signing bonus or something along that lines. But or even just lowering his base just a tad. But, I don't know if you'll get too much savings out of Camaro right now.
Okay, good stuff, guys. Let's talk about the NFL draft. And we have pro days coming up. The schedule came out yesterday, and we will publish that tomorrow for you guys to be able to take a look at. But what do the Saints do with the first couple of picks? They're going to be very important picks in my mind. What are your thoughts, Bob? Let's go with you.
Well, I threw out my idea of a quarterback before, and personally, I know Mac Jones is the one name that a lot of people have been throwing around recently. I don't know if Mac Jones falls to 28. So I think that the Saints might, if they set their sights on a quarterback, be it Mac Jones or somebody else in the first round, they're probably going to have to be at least prepared to move up into the late to even mid-teens to try to get it. If they don't go quarterback, I've seen pass rusher, edge rusher mocked to them, in a couple different mock drafts. Unless it's an absolute best player available at that time, that doesn't make a lot of sense to me. And before we went on air tonight, fellas, we were talking about it. You do still have, assuming you're going to let Trey Hendrickson test the market, you still have Cam Jordan, Marcus Davenport, and Carl Granderson coming back, and with the strong possibility of being able to re-sign Noah Spence at a team-friendly deal. A linebacker, Nick Bolton is a guy from Missouri. He's a Demario Davis type, not quite as athletic, but a guy that can make plays all over the field, an off-ball linebacker for you. A name, and I won't lie, I love this for nostalgic purposes and player purposes. I would love to see J.C. Horn in a New Orleans Saints uniform. You can't ever have too many defensive backs, capable of shutting down multiple receiving cores. J.C. Horn has been mocked to go anywhere from like 20 to 28. So that's a name to keep an eye on. And guys, we're talking like Marcus Williams is probably not going to be back in a Saints uniform. And I think that's probably pretty accurate. Kid from TCU, and there's a couple other safeties that'll be available in round 2 of the draft. You don't get Marcus Williams back. You need to get a safety in there, with the kind of range that Marcus Williams had. You just have to.
Yeah, you do. I like Horn and his demeanor. He's very confident young man. His technique still has some polishing up to do, but I think if you look at how Lattimore was when we drafted him, kind of similar type of style of play. both of those guys.
Yeah.
So, Brendan, your thoughts? Should we go linebacker, or do the Saints stay conservative as always and shore up that line with a guard or someone like that?
Well, I think linebacker is certainly a possibility. I think kind of going back to when we were talking about cap casualties is, do the Saints look for a receiver? Maybe not in round 1, but certainly maybe round 2, because you do need a guy who's going to stretch the field. And if Emmanuel Sanders isn't going to be back, who is that guy? I mean, if you want to talk about some of the best receivers in the class, you can look at Moore, the speedy, I think he's 5'9" receiver out of Purdue is a potential option for New Orleans. But, you know, the Saints in draft strategies, I think I just got to go back to last year. We were sitting doing something very similar on draft night, and then boom, Cesar Ruiz, and we're all shocked. Like, well, what are the Saints doing taking a guard, a guy that none of us really thought the Saints would go after? So, you know, the Saints could surprise us at any time. I think linebacker is a big one. I think Bob made another great point with defensive back, especially because we've talked about Janoris Jenkins and how he's probably going to be back, or they'll work some sort of restructure with him, but he's not the youngest guy either. So, you know, another year where the Saints could be looking towards the future, because last year, I think it was all about 2021. I know that Bob had talked about Troutman and Zach Vaughn, but even Cesar Ruiz, I don't think was a guy that the Saints were really going to push into that starting lineup. And then you had injuries to both guard spots, and then Ruiz had to step in. So this could be another year where the Saints are looking towards the future. But a lot of dominoes have to fall before we even get there. I mean, we talked about Marcus Williams being a guy who could potentially not come back. Obviously, if Drew doesn't come back, which we expect him not to, there's a lot of things that kind of have to fall in place for the Saints to go, okay, this is definitely what we need, or this is the first and biggest priority on draft night. But I look towards linebacker and defensive back and receiver is probably my top 3 right now.
Okay, good. What about you, John?
Yeah, I mean, you know, draft talk, because I always try to tell people, I'm like, you got to wait and see how free agency plays out, because there's going to be so many moving parts and pieces, right? And so you could say that here's our needs now, but then free agency runs and they do all these things. It's like, all right, well, man, you can do whatever you want. I think the line, obviously, offensive line, you got to shore up because Nick Easton's gone. You're either going to bank on Will Clapp as being your swing guy, or you can take a flyer and bring a guy familiar face back like Senio Kelemete, who just got released by the Texans. I mean, he's a guy that could fit in just like Nick Easton did. He was a great asset when he was here as a team. I don't know if he's the same guy, but, you know, those beg the questions. We're talking about reuniting guys, right? And all these Ingram and all Graham. What's another one, right? But, you know, my big concern becomes the defensive line, and specifically the interior, because if Malcolm Brown is a cap casualty, if you're not going to get Sheldon Rankins back, then now you're looking at a lot of young and unproven guys necessarily, right? So you're looking at, we know what you get with David Onyemata. He's going to be a beast. I think he's in for a killer year. He's very underappreciated. I think he's going to be killing it this season. But then who's the next guy? Is it Shai Tuttle? Is it Malcolm Roach? Are they going to find another guy who's a UDFA to fit in that spot? But suddenly, if you don't have Rankins back and Brown back, then that becomes a real legitimate need for this team. And so that pass rusher, I mean, you know, again, Bob said it too, but I can't reiterate it enough. You know, you're paying Cam Jordan, you're paying Marcus Davenport. These are the guys you need to get your pass rush production from. And it scares the daylights out of me about the linebacker spot. I mean, Alex Anzalone's probably gone unless they can sign him for a cheap deal. Craig Robertson, I don't know. You got a chance that he comes back, but he's more of a special teams guy, right? And you're hoping that Zach Bond takes the leap and stuff, and you're really banking that DeMario's the guy, and he does extremely great. And man, they have some interesting guys. Bolton was one. Wynton McManus, I think, was the other guy they signed on reserve future deal. You got Caden Ellis is still hanging around. I mean, there's so many different ways that this thing could go. And again, you have to wait until see how this free agency plays out. You got to wait and see how this final salary cap figure goes. But if I'm saying right now, then I'm looking, you know, assuming that some of the chips are falling, I'm looking at a safety. I'm looking at a wide receiver as an upgrade because, you know, I think Marquez Callaway is going to take a huge leap in this offense. I think Deontay Harris can too, right? But we saw last year that they were down to pretty much nobody, and it was kind of a little bit scary there. I mean, you had guys like Jawan Johnson and Lil Jordan Humphrey that were starting in the offense on wide receiver. This is Traquan Smith's last year. So, I think there's a lot of promise on this roster because there's just a lot of question marks that we still have based off all of that. And we just got to see how these chips fall.
Yeah. Good stuff, guys. I believe that we need some speed in the linebacking core. I like Bond. I think the way the position needs to evolve, and you see it in the Baltimore Ravens had this years ago, that speed at linebacker, right? You saw it play up again in the Tampa Bay Buccaneers this season. The speed at linebacker was a necessity. I think the Saints need to have that complement. If Kwan cannot come back due to the injury as well as restructuring the deal, we need to find somebody who can be able to take his place. I like Ellis. He's a good young guy, but is he ready? Is he fast enough to be able to play that position? Can he cover? That's the thing. You saw Alexander Zaloni looking in the backfield and allowing Fournette to come out the backfield and uncovered, scoring touchdowns and picking up first downs. We can't have that. We need to have somebody who can cover, or if just for depth purposes, have that ability, right? All right, guys. Any last thoughts before we sign off? Bob?
Well, again, viewers, thank you so much for tuning in with us. This is just the tip of the iceberg, folks. It's gonna be a lot to talk about all off season. Sometimes I'm sure, I have a feeling that we'll be laughing with giddiness. Other times we'll be holding our heads in our hands, wondering what the heck that they're doing, or what's the other domino to fall. So there's plenty of names. Don't jump ahead to too many mock drafts yet, because we got to see how these free agents pan out. What the Saints are able to do to keep a lot of their own. But folks, don't get too caught up in the salary cap numbers either. Remember who this front office is. They've put together teams every single year to be competitive. And even during their 7 and 9 debacles, they were still bringing in talent. They were just whiffing on it big time. This team is going to put a talented product onto the field in 2021. Yeah,
definitely. Brendan?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing, and this is across every sport for the most part, except maybe the NBA, because the NBA has changed a lot over the last couple of years, but the team that wins the offseason 9 times out of 10 does not go on to win the whole thing, right? So don't get so caught up in winning the offseason. It's about getting the right pieces that fit your scheme and your system. And that's something the Saints have done a phenomenal job of over the last, 4 years. So I'd say first, just don't buy in so much to winning the off season. Enjoy it. All four of us have said a lot of dominoes have to fall before we start really sitting here and going, this is who the Saints should draft, or this is how they should go in free agency. And it all starts with number 9 and whether he decides to come back for another year or retire. Once that domino falls, to what Bob said, a lot of the dominoes all of a sudden are going to start going. So I know it can be a little bit of a waiting game, and you get a little impatient. You're doing this with your thumbs, and you're just getting, anxious about what are the Saints doing when you have all this other news coming. But it's all coming real soon. Honestly, I think it's probably the next week or two. And then from there, just enjoy the off season.
Enjoy the ride. John, last thoughts.
Life without Drew Brees is terrifying, but yet kind of exciting. The thought if it is over and he does retire, this season is going to be so fun to watch. And I say that just because just don't know what it's going to be like. All we've known is Drew Brees for the last, 15 years, right? That's just what this team has done. And so now we'll get a chance to see, Sean Payton, right, is and how he's been able to do. This has been a very talented front office, coaching staff. They've had so many people that have gotten promoted and taken on bigger roles. Terry Fontenot in Atlanta, it's killing me, but that guy has always been so under the radar, and he's just one of many, right? And so, look, I think there's a lot of this talent they're backfilling with. It's really going to be interesting to see, from the coaching staff to the product they put on the field. And I just hope we get fans back in the stands, because it was absolutely horrendous just sitting in a Superdome with just 3,000 fans. They were loud, they were good, but it just doesn't compare to 70,000 fans. And I tell you what, if it was Brees' last run, it's a shame that nobody got to see it. And I'm grateful that I got to be in every single game and be able to see it live. But man, it's a tough spot to be in for, fans and just how everything's played out. But man, it's going to be a bumpy ride for the next couple of months, and then it's going to die down. It's going to be bumpy for the next month because of free agency. Then it's going to die down. Then it'll pick up with the draft, and then we'll be bored for months till we maybe get a training camp and maybe get some preseason. But look, I love covering this team. I thank you guys for the support. Keep at it. We're working on as much as unique stuff as we can. So it's only because of you guys that we're doing what we do.
Jason, you got some crazy stuff there, man.
Hi, Jason.
Oh my goodness. Guys, thank you for the comments. You guys have really been following up and been putting out some good stuff for us to be able to follow up on. Thank you so much for being there. Look, the Ricky Bobby reference there is going to be bumpy, baby, right? So let's make sure it's not too bumpy, but let's make sure we have a good off season. Don't forget, you can follow Bob. How can they follow you on the World Wide Web?
Obviously, you can follow, not only my articles, but all 4 of our pieces on the Saints News Network and the SI team page. You can follow me personally on Facebook, Bob Rose, or over on Twitter at BobbyR2613. And obviously, all 4 of us are very active in our Bayou Blitz Facebook page too. We run a lot of our live streams through there as well. It's a growing group, and it's very, very interactive. So if you aren't already a member of the Bayou Blitz Facebook group, look us up, send a join request. If you are a member, then thank you so much for all the contributions that you're making. It makes our life and job so much easier. Okay.
Brendan, how can they follow you?
Yeah, so obviously, just like Bob, you can follow us all at saints.media. Read up on the articles. We'll have more of this live content throughout the off season into the season as well. You can follow me personally on Twitter and Instagram at BT Boylan, at BTBoylan. Thank you guys so much for all you do. And I hate being political, but hashtag stop Asian hate.
Hey, that's real, man. That's real stuff. Stop the hate, period, guys. Yeah. All right. And Mr. Hendrix, how can they follow you?
I'll just hold that up. Does that work? Can y'all read that? No, it's just at John J. Hendrix, just like Jimmy. That's I had to break up a little bit of comedy tonight, right? At John J. Hendrix on Twitter, and then obviously keep up with us at si.com/NFL/Saints. And to echo Brendan's, yes, absolutely stop the hate. I know people feel certain ways. It's not political at all. The NFL pilots a lot of these initiatives. The Saints were huge with say her name, excuse me, this past season. So look,
yeah, look,
it's what needs to be done.
Yeah, and it's interesting. Yesterday, I attended the NFL Women's Career Forum. A lot of women are taking some great positions in the National Football League. It's going to be very interesting to see coming up how the next couple of years will look, and the complexion of the NFL is going to be a whole lot different. Trust me. All right, guys, you can follow me at KTMOZE, KTMOZ, and you can always follow all of us at Saints News on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and as well as you can go to our YouTube channel as well. I'm Kyle T. Mosley with John Hendrix, Bob Rose, as well as Brendan Boylan. Guys, let's have a good one. Don't forget, stay classy, New Orleans. Right. Take care. Bye.